neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2025 Chrysler Pacifica. And if you're looking to add a hitch to your Pacifica, I'm here to tell you it's well worth it. I also drive a minivan, and I use my hitch for everything from hauling, any house project with a trailer, to on vacation I can bring my bike rack or a cargo carrier along, and it really opens up what you can do and store stuff outside that previously you couldn't, and still be able to load everyone inside. So it's kind of a win-win. And the eTrailer might be my favorite. I'm not just being biased, and I'll show you why. This hitch is going to be an exposed cross tube, meaning you're going to see a good majority of the hitch underneath your van, but it does stick back pretty far. So unless you're really looking for it, it stays pretty hidden. And one of the features I like of the eTrailer hitches is the matte black carbide finish. It really matches the black plastic really well on most vehicles, but really it just holds up the chips and scratches better than all the other hitches that I handle on a regular basis. So really, that's what makes it stand out over the others. From the different ones that are available, they're all going to be fairly similar, and so is the installation. Now, something that I always recommend is there's going to be two different receiver tube options available. This is a 2" by 2", which is kind of the standard size when it comes to accessories, and so you're going to have tons of options available when it comes to bike racks, cargo carriers, or even a ball mount for towing. All of those are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip, and that's not included with the hitch, but sometimes when you pick up accessories, they'll have them included. If you plan on leaving your accessories on the back of your van, you might want to look at a locking pin and clip. It's a good deterrent for anyone walking by. They can't just take out that pin and clip and those accessories with them. Now, 2" by 2", I said is the standard, but there's also 1¼ available for this van. If you have accessories that are already 1¼ you can go that route, but I highly recommend going with the 2" by 2". Not only are you going to get better capacities, but also, again, you're just going to have a lot more accessories to pick from. If you plan on towing, you'll be hooking up safety chains, and plate style safety chain loop is super easy to hook up a standard S-hook. Even a larger clevis style, you'll be able to get on there fairly easily. And when it comes to towing and loading any accessory, you're going to want to adhere to the weight capacities, not only of the hitch, but also what the vehicle is rated. So check your owner's manual and take those numbers and compare it with the hitch and take the lowest ones. That way you're not overloading. But as far as the hitch goes, pretty good capacities. You have a gross trailer weight rating of 4,000 pounds, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. The tongue weight rating is going to be 400 pounds, and that's the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening. So that's going to account for a lot of your suspended accessories. So with 400 pounds, that's going to be a nice cargo carrier loaded up on vacation with some coolers. You could even probably get a 4-bike bike rack loaded up, depending on the weight of the bikes, and you shouldn't have any issues. Now you can bump up the capacities by using a weight distribution hitch, and with that in use, you're going to get 5,000 pounds for your gross trailer weight rating and 500 for your tongue weight. But again, take into account the vehicle as well as the accessories that you're hooking up to that trailer with. Now, many accessories, when it comes to like cargo carriers and bike racks, you can get ones that stow in a vertical position to shorten the length of the overall vehicle, which is really nice, but you want to make sure that it's going to work on this vehicle. So from the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point of our fascia, we are coming in right at about 5 inches. So I don't think you're going to have too many issues with anything making contact with your fascia, but keep in mind when those are folded up, more than likely you won't be able to open up your rear hatch unless you fold them down, and it can block your rear view camera, your license plate, as well as potentially your taillights and turn signals. So just something to keep in mind when you have those loaded up. Another important thing that we're going to measure is going to be ground clearance. On the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in at 13 inches. And two things. When you have suspended accessories, keep in mind that when you go up an incline, those are going to tilt towards the ground and have the potential to bottom out. So just keep that in mind when you're coming up to those inclines or large bumps. But that measurement's really going to be important for choosing a ball mount. If you're getting a fixed style ball mount, you want to make sure that your trailer's going to be nice and level going down the road. So what you can do if you have your trailer available is measure from the ground to the top of the coupler, take that measure and make sure that the trailer's nice and level, and then compare it with what we just got. From there, you can determine that rise or drop necessary, or you can always get an adjustable ball mount. On a van like this, more than likely you're going to have a slight rise for most trailers. but it kind of depends on what you're towing. Now, speaking of towing, something else you may want to pick up at the same time as a hitch is going to be 4-pole trailer wiring. That's going to account for a lot of trailers to give you the turn signals, running lights, and brake lights to keep you safe and legal. And we're going to be installing the Takancha 4-pole wiring on this vehicle, so take a look at that video if you're interested in adding that in at the same time. Now, chances are you found this video because you're looking at how to install it and if it's something you're going to want to tackle. I'm here to tell you it's a pretty easy one overall. There's going to be a few steps, and part of that is dropping down the underbody panel that's there, which will need to be trimmed before going back up. Along with that, you're going to need to drop the muffler, which is fairly easy to do, as well as a heat shield, and you're going to be trimming that. But beyond that, you're just feeding hardware up into the frame. You're going to raise the hitch up, tighten, and torque it down. So it's not terribly hard to do. I'd give yourself maybe 1 to 2 hours to get this knocked out. You might want an extra set of hands to be able to help you raise that hitch up. But if you watch the video and maybe you don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to do it, I totally understand, but don't let that hinder you from getting a hitch on your vehicle. It really does make a huge difference as to what you can do. So if that installation is hindering you, you can find someone close to you to get it installed, and you can be out on your adventures by using our dealer locator. You just simply put in your zip code and you can find a shop close to you to get that hitch installed. For you DIYers, stick around. Let's take a look at the installation. To get started on our installation, we're going to be removing this underbody panel. That's going to give us space to put our hitch up in place, and we'll be removing the heat shield as well. So we'll be spending a decent amount of time under here just getting prepped for the hitch, and we are going to be doing some trimming on this later on. So this will be going back up, so you'll get a nice clean look. And where we're going to focus first is we have a bunch of 8mm screws along this edge that are holding it in. So we'll start here. And something I'd recommend, have a nice organized spot to keep all of your hardware. It'll make it a lot easier for reinstallation. And once you get all of the black screws there, we're going to continue on our driver's side here and get these. Now, while we have the 8mm out, we're also going to go to our driver's side wheel well, and there's going to be right behind the tire an 8mm here, here, and here that we're going to need to remove as well. Now grab a flathead screwdriver as well as a 10mm socket, and there's going to be these plastic nuts. These are going to be our 10 mils. So as we go through, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then also there's going to be 2 10mm bolts for the other underbody panel, and that's going to give us access to more of those plastic nuts. So I'll get these 10s off first. Now that flathead screwdriver, as I mentioned, there's going to be some of these quarter turns, and it's a large Phillips, but a flathead here, if you just turn this, that's going to loosen that up. A lot of times I wait to do this one. There's also another one that's it's somewhere under here, right here. We're going to want to wait until we get all the nuts off, because a lot of times when you go to loosen these, they're still tight in place from the nut, and they're just going to re-thread themselves. So if you get the nuts off first and then do these, that should drop out this panel. So I'm pulling pressure on our underbody panel, and then as I loosen it up, that should drop out. Same thing for this one, just keep that pressure again, otherwise it might just start threading itself back on. Once those are out, the underbody panel should come out. And we will be trimming this a little bit later. The instruction goes right into it. I like to wait until the hitch is on there, and that way I can really get a nice clean look and make sure that it goes up properly. I mentioned that we're going to be pulling down this heat shield, and we're still going to do that, but in order to get access to the hardware that's kind of tucked up behind the muffler, we're going to lower the muffler down. And to do that, there's going to be 2 exhaust isolators. And so this is just that rubber piece that attaches to the exhaust hanger. And what I do is just with a pry bar, you can use the exhaust tip as leverage and just pry this off. You can do the top or bottom. I think the bottom is going to be a little bit easy for us. And sometimes these just want to fight you a little bit. So if that's the case, what you can do is put a little soapy water or silicone spray, and generally that's going to help loosen that up, make it a little bit easier to come off. Also, if the exhaust is not hot, you can also kind of pull to get that to separate. So that's one isolator. The next one we're going to want to drop is by the rear cross member. So similar concept here. You can use this welded on bracket as leverage. And that's just going to lower that enough. Now there's another isolator right up here that's going to support the exhaust, so we should be good like this. And that's really going to allow us to get this heat shield off and also to raise the hitch up later. The heat shield has two white plastic 10mm nuts. There's one that's right here, and then there's going to be one, if you pull the exhaust down, you'll see that up there on the frame rail. So let's take this down. And the studs will probably hold this up a little bit for you, but we're going to pull this down and immediately trim it so we can get this put back up. So I'll go ahead, I'll mark this out and show you where I'm going to cut. For this, I would probably recommend, you can use an angle grinder or something along those lines, but normally aviation shears do a really good job of cutting through this. So after marking this out, there's measurements in the instruction, but it really just kind of follows this contour and right about in line with this stud hole and also where this pinches on our heat shield. It makes a nice box here. So we are going to be losing a mounting point. It's really not going to cause any issue for us because we have multiple other ones. So I'll get this cut out. Like I said, tin snips do a really good job here. The edges are going to be extremely sharp when you start cutting, so just keep that in mind. You know, just keep your hands away from those edges, or you can wear some nice gloves as you do this. So with that trimmed, we can get this put back in place. And as I mentioned, we are going to be losing one of the mounting points, but that's okay. And we can put this plastic nut back on here. Now we're going to begin to get our hardware in place to raise our hitch up. And the way we're going to do that is using a pull wire, or a fish wire as they call it, spacer block, and a carriage bolt. And starting on the driver's side, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to want a bolt that's going through here and then eventually here. So we'll start with this one. We'll take our coiled end, feed that through, and then find the coiled end as you pass it back on this access hole. This hole is a little bit larger than the others, and that's going to make it really easy for us to get our hardware in place. So don't pull this all the way through. If in fact, if you need to, you can put a bend on this end and that'll kind of help keep it from pulling through. And on the coiled end, we'll take our spacer block, feed that through. You can feed that up into the frame rail if you want. And then our carriage bolt, we just thread this on, and then we can pass this in, pull the back end of our pull wire, and now we have our first stud that's made. Now leave the pull wires on. This really helps as we raise the hitch up to slide this through the holes. That way if this pushes in the frame rail, we can bring it back down. Now on the access hole, what we'll do is going to be a reverse fish wire technique, which is actually really easy to do. We'll just take our fish wire, and you can put the spacer block, just kind of hold that in place, thread on your carriage bolt, feed that up, same with the spacer block, and that drops down. Now something unique, if you have a hybrid, the instructions will change a little bit. We don't have one today, so just follow the instructions. A lot of the steps are going to be very similar, but slightly different because there's generally going to be a canister that's mounted up here. There is going to be this ground screw or stud that has a 10mm nut, and we're going to want to remove that. So we'll take that off now. And so we have the 2 bolts on this side. On the passenger side, there's going to be 3, and I'll show you how that looks. Passenger side is going to be the same concept. The only difference is we have 2 of them that we're going to be doing pull wire for, and that's these 2 up front, and then the rear is going to be that reverse fish wire. So you've probably noticed that this is pretty sharp, so if you need to, you can bend some of this out of the way. What I like to do is just bend up the sharp edges so that makes it nice and smooth. So this might be something you might want to put the heat shield up after you get the hardware in. Completely up to you, but you just want to make sure that it's up in place before you get the hitch in. So just make sure you're not cutting yourself in the process. So at this point, we're ready to grab our hitch and an extra set of hands. It's pretty bulky, and so we'll grab our serrated flange nuts. That way when we raise it up, we can start to get that hardware started. Now we have our hitch ready. I got Jesse to help me and have at least one serrated flange nut ready on each side, because as we raise this up, if we can get a few threads started on each side, it'll hold the hitch up, making it a lot easier to get the rest of the hardware in. And on the passenger side, it's pretty straightforward. There's only one spot that the wires can go, so just feed them in that corresponding hole. On the driver's side, it's a little bit different. You're going to want to use the furthest rear hole and the furthest forward hole when you're threading these in. So we'll just pull the pull wires, kind of guide this up in place. And then once we have this held up, if you can sometimes slide the hitch to hold that bolt in place, and that way you can thread on that serrated flange nut. So whatever one's easiest here to get started. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to slide this hitch and just kind of create some friction on the bolt, and that'll allow me to thread this on. But you can see why having an extra set of hands sure makes this a lot easier. And then once that's started on each side, then we can get the remaining hardware in place. Now you may notice that stud, whether it be a tolerance based off the hitch manufacturer or just from the factory, it's going to bind up a little bit, and I'm having trouble to pull this through. So what I'd recommend doing is I just took a pry bar and just kind of hit it with a hammer. So if you need to, you can shift the hitch around to try to get it to draw up. It might still fight you a little bit, but knocking that out of the way will get that to where hopefully you can start at least the threads on that bolt. And then once you get that started, as you draw it up, it should push that thread out of the way. But again, if you need to kind of massage it a little bit to get it out of the way, go ahead and do that. And once you get all your hardware started by hand, we're going to snug everything down with a 3/4 inch socket. You don't need to get crazy here. We're just going to get everything snug so it draws it all up, because we'll be coming back with a torque wrench to properly torque everything. Once you've snugged down your hardware, come back with the torque wrench and the settings found in the instruction manual and properly torque these down. And this is an important step because you're going to be towing a decent amount of weight potentially, and you want to make sure that it's going to be tight enough for the lifespan of the hitch. But also you can over tighten it, causing damage to the hardware. So torque wrench really make sure that we get it dialed in properly. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can get one here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. And once you torque these down, that's really all you're going to need it for, but it'll give you that peace of mind that it's done right. So I'll finish up torquing these, and that's really going to get the hitch installed. But there is going to be a portion of that underbody panel that we need to trim out. So I'll show you how to do that. Now, trimming this, I did mention that the instruction gives you measurements, but I like to hold it up. I think it gives you a nice actual representation of where you need to trim. In fact, I made some marks, and it is slightly off from the measurements that they give you, because they normally have you measuring 6 inches, and I think that's a little too wide. So what I like to do is truly just mock this up. And this is also going to make sure that you have the proper orientation of where you're cutting. Instructions are a little bit hard to understand what they're trying to get you to do. So I'll slide these over the studs and really just try to pretend like we're getting this all lined up. You'll see where our mounting holes should line up here, and just with a paint marker or a piece of tape, what I do is I go to the side of the hitch and mark where it's hitting that underbody panel on both sides, and then bring it down. So this is where I ended up marking it, whereas 6 inches puts it out here, but we're going to be cutting a 10-inch slit back, and that's just going to account for this side part, and it'll leave everything pretty well covered besides that. So with that marked out, I'll make my 10-inch line back. And this is kind of like a carpeted pressed fabric. You can use a pair of scissors, you can use a pair of tin snips, whatever you have handy. And you can always cut off more. So start small, mock it up, and that way you can get a nice clean fit. Now once you're happy with the trimming that was done on the underbody panel, everything's fitting up right, we can now get our panel put back in place. And then all that's left to do is get all the hardware back in the reverse order. don't forget to also get the isolators put back on your exhaust. Once you do all that, all that's left to do is load up your accessory, put it in your pin and clip, and you're ready to hit the road. Hopefully this video helped you get your hitch installed, and if it did, please let us know in the comments. If there's things that I missed that could have been helpful for other neighbors like you to get this hitch installed as easy as possible, please leave a comment. We love to read those comments to make our videos as best as possible for you and neighbors like you that are getting hitches installed on their Pacifica. And also, if you're out on an adventure and you're maybe loaded up with a cargo carrier, bike rack, or pulling a trailer with your Pacifica, please take some pictures and share it with us. We love to see neighbors out on adventures using products that we sell here at eTrailer. My name's Brad. Thanks for watching the installation of a eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2025 Chrysler Pacifica.